Hi friends, my name is Emily and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my January wrap-up. January was a weird month, a super weird month. I have never worked harder while on vacation, and I will talk a little bit about what I did in January at the end of the video. Right now we're just going to talk about the books. So one of the first things that I did in January was set up my bullet journal and my reading tracking, and one of the things that I am tracking is how many of the books that from my owned and unread TBR I am actually tackling. So I'm going to keep track of that in these videos as well. The first thing that I read in January was The Radium Girls by Cait. Now I used my Audible credit to listen to this, and it was horrifying and fascinating all at the same time. I can't imagine what reading the physical book would be like, because I feel like the information was interesting listening to it, but I feel like it would have been a really dry read, if that makes sense. Like, having someone tell you the story is completely different than dragging your eyes down the page. The Radium Girls tells the story of young women who were working in factories during the war, painting luminescent numbers on clocks. They were told that radium was super safe. Radium was believed to be like this miracle cure, right? It was something that they found could finally be used to treat cancer, and they started putting it in and on everything because it glowed, ooh ah, and it was thought to be medically safe. The girls in the factory employed a lip dip method, which is a way of painting that I believe comes from brush painting. So it's very fine painting, and so you would paint, and then you dip it in the water or whatever to change colors, and to reform the point you would put the brush in your mouth and form the point on this very, very fine brush again. And because these girls were painting numbers, tiny numbers on clocks for the military, again, they had to be very beautiful, very precise, and this lip dip method was introduced. So they would take the paintbrushes, they would put them in the radium paint solution. This paint would gum up really fast, so there was a lot of dipping in the water and then reforming the brush. And then the company deemed the water too big a waste because they saw how much of this precious radium paint was in the water, and so they took the water away. That led to the girls eating tons of paint. And radium is something that it's chemically similar to our bone structure, and so it would sink into the bones of folks, and for some people it was very fast. It had a breakdown rate that was really quick, and so these women's jaws would fall apart. It was absolutely horrifying. Women would have tooth pain and they'd be losing all their teeth, and then a physician or a dentist would go to remove a tooth, and the whole jawbone would just come out, which is absolutely. Can you wrap your mind around that? And so this book is about the, discovery that radium is bad for you. Don't eat it. Don't sit near anyone who's been eating it. You will get radium poisoning and die in very, very painful ways. If you're interested in women's history, these women were thought very well off for having these amazing high-paying jobs, and they could afford beautiful clothes and independence, and folks were really jealous of these radium girls because they would leave the factory and literally glow as they walked down the street. On the one hand, it was super important because as part of women's liberation, women's independence, having employment in such a field was a milestone. It's worth noting, but at the same time, these women were put in danger, and it set a lot of legal precedents as well. Building the case to get at these companies was fascinating, and I don't know how it would feel to read this book, but listening to it was amazing. So that was a new buy because I picked that up with an Audible credit. Then I reread Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone by J.K. Rowling. I always say her name wrong. So this I am reading as part of a project for this year. I am teaching the Harry Potter series. It's part of a video series that I've called Lumos, Illuminating the Harry Potter series. I will leave a link to the project above. I had a lot of fun with this. I mean, obviously it's a reread. It's something that I've read many times. Like, I have grown up with this book. I have spent 20 plus years with this book, and it's very entwined with who I am as a reader and a writer and an academic, and like, it's very important to me. And so to get to reread it and teach it on this channel has been like fun. I've already talked about it. Check it out if you're interested. The next books that I read in very quick succession, and these came from my TBR. There's a Goodreads shelf for it if you want to see what's on it. Goodreads is linked down below. To All the Boys I Loved Before by Jenny Han. P.S. I Still Love You. Always and Forever Lara Jean. So these are the stories of Korean American teenager Lara Jean, who at the beginning of the books wrote a series of letters over the years to the various boys that she's had a crush on. So Lara Jean's most recent crush is her older sister Margot's boyfriend, Josh. Lara Jean is doing everything to hide that and just be like a good friend with her sister's boyfriend and a good sister to her sister. When Margot leaves for university to Scotland and she breaks up with Josh, at the same time, somehow these letters that Lara Jean has written confessing her love for several boys, including Josh, get sent out. And in an effort to cover up the fact that she likes her sister's boyfriend, her sister's ex-boyfriend, Lara Jean ends up fake dating Peter Kravinsky. What I really liked about these, I've watched the movie on Netflix and it's cute, but what that Netflix adaptation misses is the family relationships. Like, first of all, these are so family focused, which is wonderful to see in YA. These also deal a lot more with the struggles that Lara Jean has with having the Korean part of her family unit, her mother, has passed away. And her white father is left to try and carry on and like teach the Koreanness to his daughters. And so he tries to do that through food. And in the movie, it seems like the dad tries to cook the Korean food and it is consistently terrible. He can't do it. And so there's this like failure to reproduce this cultural experience, to share this cultural knowledge with his daughters. And like, he's just like a bumbling goof. Whereas in the books, it's just this one time that the father's Korean meal doesn't turn out. In general, it does. I really liked the ways that this book really thought about identity and the ways that we share identity. Like, if you've come from another place, like, how important is food and language? And if once you are missing those people that fill that void, how easy it is to lose those connections. Again, like Candy, they're fun to read, but there's also more going on there. And I think the family relationships, the intergenerational relationships are really interesting. And I'm curious to see if the second film that Netflix is putting out this month, February 12th, brings in any more of these pieces now that like the romance part has been established, because these were so good. And so all of those came off my TBR. And then I did buy 2 new books for a book club. 2 of these reads are new buys, and I don't regret them at all because they speak to the Star Trek nerd in me. Like, to the deepest part of my core, the small child that grew up watching The Next Generation and like fantasizing about life on a starship, meeting all these different groups of humans that think and act in different ways. And that is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This is soft science fiction at its finest. Like, I love soft sci-fi. I don't care how like fake science works, and like a lot of the sci-fi that I had to read for a science fiction course was hard sci-fi, and I hated it. And so I tend to stay away from science fiction because I don't care. I don't care about how the science works. This is about the people It's like if Star Trek The Next Generation were made today. Like at the time, Star Trek TNG was pretty radical. Some of the episodes had men in dresses, women in pants. There were very like fluid like Star Trek uniforms. I believe that only happened in the first episode, but also like the casting of Black actors in prominent roles. Geordie LaForge, you have Guinan, Whoopi Goldberg's character. Like there were so many things about the early Star Trek episode, like those early TNG episodes, that were just like revolutionary for its time and place, the early 90s, but it's not without problems. This reminds me so much of if Star Trek were now. We have gender fluid alien races. We have like just so much openness with sexuality and gender and interspecies relationships. This motley crew that we meet on the Wayfarer is so fascinating. A lot of folks that I have been talking to about this series say that the second book, which I also read this month and is the one that we're reading for book club, is the best of the trilogy. So far, I loved this one way more just because of the Star Trek vibes. Like this, we spend in space, we spend it on a ship, we're meeting all these different people who are like weird and wacky and quirky, and it was just an absolute joy. If you are at all a Trekkie, 10 out of 10 would recommend. If you are looking for like progressive, feminist, gender inclusive sci-fi, chef's kiss, phenomenal. Highlight of the month, possibly, dare I say it, of 2020. The next book that I read is not as great. So I read Rage out of the Bachman books, which are 4 early novels from Stephen King when he was writing under the pen name Richard Bachman. So Rage is part of the Red Rum Book Club. The Red Rum Book Club is a Stephen King book club I host for my patrons for as little as $1 a month. You can join the club, have access to the Discord, to the live show where we discuss the book, and I read Rage, which I was looking forward to because it is the one book that Stephen King has pulled from publication because of the negative reactions to it. It has been tied to several school shootings where young folks had this book in their possession or had read it and like felt inspired by Charlie Decker and his actions shooting his teachers and holding up his classmates. And I was looking forward to reading this book because I was like, this must be like radically bad if Stephen King pulled it. And I feel like what we learned was that it's just like a messy early novel, and like you can see the potential in Stephen King's writing and like the early roots of a lot of his very lived-in characters, the really realistic feeling characters, but at the end of the day it's just not a great novel. It's a little bit of a mess. It's sort of rehashing like Lord of the Flies and Catcher in the Rye. Both of those stories do like angsty teens reestablishing some new world order better. Why do we even need this? Like, it's just not good. And so like the live show was a little bit of a struggle, but I am glad that we read it. I am also now left with the horrifying mental image of Charlie attempting to have sex with a flaccid penis as trying to fit a marshmallow through a mailbox slot. I will never look at marshmallows the same again. I would not recommend that you read Rage. However, next month we are reading Night Shift, which is a short story collection by Stephen King. There are a couple of stories in there that I am very much looking forward to discussing. So if you are interested in joining the Red Run Book Club, we have 2 left in this like first arc, Night Shift and The Stand. Links for the Red Run Book Club will be on the screen and in the description box down below. So the last book that I read this month was A Closed and Common Orbit by Becky Chambers. This is set in the same universe, and it's following 2 characters that we met in The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. I guess I can't really say much about this novel because one of the characters' reasons for going to this planet is like a spoiler for the ending of the first one. Okay. I'm gonna be intentionally vague because of that. So both of these characters are dealing with the moral and like philosophical implications of artificial intelligence and giving technology, or I guess acknowledging the feelings and the personhood of artificial intelligence and like grappling with that in a society that doesn't give AI any rights and sort of uses AI without thinking about what that means for these sentient beings that they have created. I feel like it was a faster read and it was a little more contained than The Long Way to a Small and Angry Planet. Is that the title? The Long Way to a Small and Angry Planet, yeah. I didn't enjoy A Closed and Common Orbit as much, and maybe because like I was more fascinated by all of the interesting species that we saw in The Long Way to a Small and Angry Planet, that I didn't particularly care for the two humans with interesting views on AI in A Closed and Common Orbit. But that is the book that we will be discussing in my real life book club, so we'll see what other people thought of it. That brings me to the end of the books that I read in the month of January. So that was 1 reread, 3 new buys, and 4 books from my TBR for a total of 8 books, which was a pretty decent start to the month, all things considered. The housekeeping piece is that I have been working really hard on Lumos. I am working really hard on doing a good job teaching these pieces and trying to improve my editing. So like I recently tried my hand at a video commentary that my guinea pig patrons got to see. I spent so much time Googling like how to do this, how to manipulate my editing program in different ways, that by the time I got to the end of the video, I was like, I should scrap this and just start again with all the new things that I've learned, but that also seems like a waste of time. So like I'm so excited to pick up Chamber of Secrets and try my hand at that style of video again. But learning all of these things was so time consuming. Like I took 5 days off of work to recover from the burnout of Christmas and ended up working longer days on YouTube and this like freelance work. Literally 5 days of 10+ hours working on these things, and I still only produced 1 video that anyone saw. Like I also have a list of like 15 videos that I filmed during Christmas and then just never had the time to edit. In 2019, I really tried to get up 2 videos a week, and I have been trying that so far like throughout the month of January, and I don't think I've succeeded a single time. It sounds awful. I'm trying to balance the pleasing of algorithms, as in like the way YouTube rewards regular content, with the quality of the product that I want to produce. Like I really enjoy learning these new skills. I have really enjoyed putting the work in and teaching these pieces. Like as I improve these skills, that I get faster at it again and I get back to like the 2 videos a week. I'm not saying this to like guilt trip or anything. I just want to be like honest about the amount of labor that has gone into this, and like I'm enjoying it. Like I absolutely loved last week. I love the process of researching and writing for Lumos. I really love teaching. So like I'm totally enjoying what I'm doing. It's just also the reason that like nothing else has happened. So like if you're not down for Lumos, I'm sorry, that's all that's happening. I will try my best to produce other content. I'm trying so hard, folks. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons who support the channel, who make these videos possible. Their support has meant a lot in terms of being able to purchase readings and research for this piece. Very appreciative to them for helping to support me in my efforts to bring Lumos to light. I hope that you had a great reading month in January. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Until next time, bye!